You can afford the upgrade. That is the part that does not make sense to people who know your numbers. You can afford the apartment in the building where the lobby has a coffee bar and a concierge who learns your name. You can afford the car that arrives with a different relationship to traffic. You can afford the watch that ends certain conversations before they start. You can afford the dinner where the bill is not the point. And you pass on all of it. Not because you are afraid of money, not because you are performing deprivation as a personality trait, not because you missed the conversation where everyone agreed that success should eventually become visible. You pass on it because you finally understand what the purchase is actually asking you for. It is not asking for one payment. It is asking for a quiet monthly piece of your future options. It is asking for a small piece of your ability to leave something that stops being right for you. It is asking for a fraction of the calm you have spent years constructing carefully in the background of a life that looks from the outside like it should want more. And from the outside, you do look confusing. Your income says you could live much louder. Your savings rate says you should have upgraded by now. Your friends do the math, and the math does not match the life. They see the same car you drove 3 years ago. They see the apartment in the neighborhood that peaked before you did. And the confusion bothers people more than you expected. Because when you can afford everything and choose almost nothing, you become a quiet challenge to the story everyone else is maintaining. The story says income and lifestyle should rise together. The story says success should eventually show up in finishes and floor plans and the particular sound a car door makes when it costs enough. But you have lived long enough now to see what the story leaves out. Every upgrade comes with a shadow that does not appear in the listing. The better apartment comes with higher rent that stays higher forever. The new car comes with a payment and higher insurance. The luxury vacation comes with the photographs and also the question underneath the photographs of whether you were resting or performing rest for an audience you assembled yourself. And the more you can afford, the more dangerous this becomes. When you are genuinely struggling, overspending announces itself immediately. The balance shows it, the card refuses it, the consequences arrive early and loudly. But when you earn well, overspending learns better manners. It arrives dressed as something you deserve. It uses the word finally. That is how people with impressive incomes end up with no actual room. Not from one reckless decision, from 100 reasonable ones that each made sense individually, and together converted every raise into a higher floor until the income was real and the freedom was gone. Chapter 1. The thing you almost bought. You were standing in a showroom on a Saturday morning. The car is genuinely beautiful, in the way things are designed to be genuinely beautiful when enough money went into making them irresistible. And the payment is possible. That is what makes it dangerous. Not impossible, not reckless in any obvious way. Possible. The salesperson treats it like a natural next step, because for most people at your income level, it is a natural next step. You have the credit, you have the salary. A younger version of you would have heard that as permission. But today, a quieter voice asks a different question. If this payment leaves your account every month, what will not? Not in theory, in the actual texture of your actual life. Will the investment transfer still happen automatically, or will there be months when it feels like the reasonable casualty? Will you still feel the particular calm you have spent years constructing carefully in the background of a life that looks from the outside like it should want more? The salesperson is selling a car. The real transaction is between the version of you that wants to be recognized and the version of you that wants to remain free. You hand back the keys. No speech, no dramatic moment. You just walk to the car you already own and drive home in the thing that is already paid for. For the first few minutes, it feels almost anticlimactic, and then halfway home, something else arrives. Not excitement, relief. And relief is the emotional signal of a purchase you didn't actually need. That night, you increase the automatic transfer to your brokerage account. You do not tell anyone. The first lesson of buying almost nothing when you can afford everything is not about the math.
It's about the question you learn to ask before the showroom, before the listing, before the algorithm figures out what you were looking at. The question is not, can I afford this? The question is, what kind of life does this become normal inside? Because normal is the most expensive word in personal finance.
Chapter 2. The higher you go, the louder the test. There is a mistake people make about restraint. They assume it belongs naturally to people with limited options. If you cannot buy the thing, of course you do not buy the thing. That is not discipline. That is arithmetic. But once you genuinely can buy it, the test changes entirely. The first raise asks for a better apartment. The second asks for a better car. The bonus asks for a trip that matches the version of yourself you want people to understand. The promotion asks for clothes that belong in the room you now sit in. And because each individual decision is affordable, the pattern becomes invisible. This is why lifestyle creep is so hard to catch. It does not feel like losing control. It feels like finally catching up to the income you worked for. You tell yourself you earned this, and you did. But at some point, your income stops being a resource and starts being a costume department. You are no longer buying the nicer version of something because it solves a real problem. You are buying it because your previous life has started to look like evidence against your current income. That embarrassment is expensive in a way that never appears on any statement. It makes a perfectly functional apartment feel like a confession. It makes a reliable car feel like an explanation you owe strangers. So you buy the category. And for a while, it does what it promised. The assumptions improve, the compliments arrive. But recognition has a very short half-life. The new thing becomes the expected thing faster than you anticipated. The expected thing becomes the floor, and now you need another upgrade just to maintain the same feeling of being seen. That is not wealth. That is a subscription to approval that auto-renews every time your income rises. So you build a rule before the showroom, before the listing, before the mood can negotiate with your values. 3 questions. Will this still matter to me in 90 days? Will this make my ordinary Tuesday better or only my public image better? And who exactly am I buying this for? The Tuesday question becomes the most important one because almost every real life is lived on ordinary Tuesdays. If the purchase does not improve Tuesday, be suspicious of it. That does not mean never buy it. It means stop confusing a louder life with a better one. Chapter 3. The scoreboard nobody can see. At some point, you stop measuring wealth by what other people can read from the outside. Someone pulls into the parking lot in a 6-figure vehicle, and instead of feeling the automatic response, you feel curious. Is it paid for? Does the payment create a pressure that follows them into rooms? Is this freedom, or is this a beautiful monthly obligation dressed as an arrival? Someone posts from a resort, and you do not feel the pull you used to feel. You wonder whether they came home lighter or more anxious. Someone announces a bigger house, and you can feel genuinely happy for them without assuming they are more secure than you. Because you finally understand that visible money and actual wealth are often moving in completely opposite directions. Visible money is money that has already made its speech. Money has been converted into leather and glass and square footage and applause. It has done what money does when it gets specced. It is gone. Actual wealth is quieter. It's the money that stayed available, the money that can still become a choice, the money that can absorb a bad month or cover an emergency or let you take time to find the right next thing instead of grabbing the first available thing because rent is due. That's why actual wealth looks almost invisible from the outside. Its highest purpose is options, and options do not photograph well. This becomes your private scoreboard. How many months can you sustain your life if work stops? How much of your income arrives already spoken for before you have made a single decision? How quickly could you leave a situation that has stopped being right for you? Those questions reveal more about your actual financial position than any driveway ever will. You are not just accumulating numbers, you are systematically reducing the number of ways life can put you in a corner. Chapter 4.
the day it becomes real. There's a meeting. Your manager calls it with less notice than usual. The tone is the kind of tone that makes everyone sit slightly differently in their chairs. The words are careful, restructuring, evolving priorities, nothing final yet. You look at the faces around the table. You see the calculation happening in real time behind people's eyes. Mortgage, car payment, private school tuition, the renovation that is already 2/3 done, the credit card balance that was supposed to be gone by summer. These are not careless people. Many of them earn numbers that would have seemed impossible to their younger selves, but the income has been assigned so completely that any interruption feels like a structural emergency. And then you notice your own body in the chair. Your pulse is elevated. You're human, but you are not falling. Because your life is lighter than your income. You have months of expenses that exist specifically for this kind of moment. You have no car payment. Your housing costs less than the market says you could afford. For years, this looked from the outside like under-living. Today, it feels like the specific kind of armor that you cannot buy after the moment arrives. You can only build it before. This is what all those quiet choices were actually purchasing. Not the absence of nice things, the presence of actual options. You can take the severance and breathe instead of signing whatever they offer. You can interview without the desperation that people can hear. You can decline the role that pays well, but would cost you something you have decided is not for sale. That's what money is for. Not to prove you are safe, to make you actually safer.
Chapter 6: The Almost Nothing List. When people hear this philosophy, they imagine a life of white walls and careful receipts and a kind of joyless accounting that mistakes deprivation for discipline. That is not the life you are building. You are not trying to spend the least possible amount on everything. You are trying to waste the least possible amount on anything. A life built around spending as little as possible is organized around spending. It is just organized around the minimum version. A life built around wasting as little as possible is organized around value. Your almost nothing list is not a punishment, it is a filter. You buy almost nothing that exists primarily to manage how strangers categorize you. You buy almost nothing that adds a recurring payment to your life in exchange for a feeling that fades in 90 days. But the things that pass the filter, you can be genuinely generous there. You spend on health. You spend on the relationships that are actually yours. You spend on the experience that will still mean something to you in 10 years. You spend on the tool that quietly makes the thing you care about more possible. And you invest what remains. Not because the spreadsheet is your religion, because every dollar that goes somewhere productive instead of performing something temporary is a small, quiet employee who works in the background of your life without needing to be managed or applauded or explained. And room is the actual product. Room for the car repair. Room for the medical bill. Room for the industry that shifts faster than anyone predicted. Room for the family situation nobody planned for. Room to be wrong without it becoming a crisis. Chapter 6: What the Quiet Builds. Years pass and the strangest thing happens. The things you chose not to buy become more valuable than the things you almost bought. The car you passed on became an investment account with real weight in it. The apartment you did not stretch for became the freedom to keep renting because your season called for flexibility, not roots. The upgrade you skipped became the month you could take between one thing and the next without it feeling like collapse. This is the compounding nobody puts in a calculator. Money compounds, obviously, but so does the identity you build around money. Every time you let a want exist without immediately obeying it, you teach yourself that wanting is not an emergency. Every time you let a raise widen the gap instead of raise the floor, you teach yourself that income is a resource, not a directive. Every time you choose the ordinary, sufficient thing on purpose, you become slightly harder to manipulate by the people and systems whose business model depends on your insecurity. That may be the quietest form of financial independence. Not never working again, not a beach somewhere with a specific account balance in the background. Financial independence starts much earlier than any of those finishes. It starts the first time an advertisement knows exactly what you are uncertain about, and you can look at it and say beautiful and no. It starts when someone else's upgrade does not make your own life feel like a draft. It starts when you can afford everything, buy almost nothing, and feel not deprived but genuinely relieved.
Not because you are withholding life from yourself, because you finally know which parts of life are actually yours. Here's the practical version of everything this video has been building toward. First, define your enough, not a fantasy number, the actual monthly cost of a life that is genuinely good for you. Housing, food, transport, health, relationships, some pleasure, some generosity, and a real margin for the things that budgets always forget to include because they have never happened yet. Second, protect the gap. When income rises, decide in advance what percentage becomes lifestyle and what percentage becomes freedom. If you do not decide in advance, the culture will decide for you. Third, automate what matters before willpower gets tired. The investment transfer, the emergency fund contribution, the debt payoff. Fourth, test every upgrade against Tuesday. Not the vacation, not the dinner. Tuesday, the bill that arrived, the thing that needed attention, the ordinary hour. If the purchase does not improve Tuesday, be honest about what it's actually for. Fifth, spend without guilt on the things that genuinely belong to your life. The point of buying almost nothing is not to make you smaller, it is to make your yes mean something. And before you go, one question. What is one thing you can technically afford right now, but that your future options would thank you for not buying yet? Not because you are depriving yourself, because you are choosing yourself. That distinction is the whole thing. When you can afford everything and buy almost nothing, the world reads it as saying no to life. But you know what you're actually doing. You are saying no to the things that would quietly take your life from you, and saying that no loudly enough that your future self can still say yes to the things that actually matter. This content is created for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is not financial advice.